Hey guys, good evening. Just I'm setting up the things here, guys. Do let me know in the chat if I'm audible as well. Meanwhile, I'm just quickly setting up the things. I hope I'm pretty much audible, right? Right. So, great. Looks like I'm pretty much audible as well as visible. Okay. A very good evening to one and all present in our chat today. So we are into our second last session for this series, which is data analysis in 3 weeks. So we are pretty much covering the Pandas topics in data analysis, and we have been doing some quite good detailing in Pandas. So today's agenda is group by. So in Pandas, in data analysis, rather, we there are many a times we are supposed to do the group by. So we are supposed to do the analysis individually on separate groups, and those groups need not be explicitly present in the data. So you have to find out your group, and based on those individual subgroups, you have to do the analysis, right? That's pretty much part of our day-to-day job in data science. So you do that, and that is where group by comes very handy. It works as one of the very major key skills in data science. And in Pandas, you do have a great functionality available directly as group buys. So we will be pretty much talking about group buys in detail today, and we'll see how exactly you can write the group by queries and what all things you have to keep in mind so that you can be writing the optimized way of group buys. Okay, so that's pretty much what we have to talk about today, and that's what our agenda says. Okay, so we are into our second last session, so we'll try to finish group buys, and we'll try to solve a couple of questions also on group buys. And tomorrow we'll be wrapping up the session, so we'll be doing the remainder of the questions. So we'll be finishing up with a good set of problem statements, and we'll try to cover them as well. Okay, so that's pretty much what we have in the house for today's discussion, and tomorrow we'll be wrapping up our playlist. Okay, and then we'll be eventually starting with a new playlist. So rest assured. So we have few suggestions, we have few feedbacks. So you'll be getting the update on the GeeksForGeeks Python channel for that. So for the upcoming playlist. Okay, great. So but as you know, anyway, we are going pretty much live in details of the data science live course, which is starting from 9th of April. So do not forget to go through the detailing of that course. Data science live going to be live from 9th of April. It's going to be a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours of session per day, and that's going to be 2 days per weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, starting from 8 p.m. So 8 p.m. till minimum is 10, so then we can extend it also depending on the requirement, depending on the usages. So that's pretty much how the session will be shaping up. So do not forget to subscribe yourself to the data science live session. Go through the detailing of the syllabus. So you will find almost all the latest tools and tech needed to kickstart your journey in data science pretty much there in the syllabus. Okay, so do look at the syllabus, and I'll be really looking forward to you guys to join in the live discussion for data science live course. Okay, it's going to be a 10 weeks long crash course kind of a thing on data science. Great, so that's pretty much it. I'll quickly introduce myself, and I'll jump into today's content, that is Pandas Group By. So, my name is Arpit Jain, and I'm a lead data scientist myself. I have almost 9 years of industry experience into multiple domains, be it finance, automobile, manufacturing, telecommunication. Along with this, I'm also a motivational speaker, so I take up industry sessions. I talk to students regarding their job, career placements, so anything in specific regarding to data science, or even the jobs, career placements, resumes, do let me know. We can obviously discuss. So it's pretty much a live session. Hello, hi Mahesh. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. So it's pretty much a live session. So you know that. So I'm monitoring the chat. I'll try to come back to your queries to the best of my knowledge, but do not forget to ask your questions. It's always important to ask the questions. If you do not ask, the question will always remain with yourself, right? And nobody will be actually taking any action on top of that. So do ask your questions, feel free to ask your questions, right? That's pretty much a live session. Great, so let me jump to the content quickly. Let me just pull up the slide for you, just a minute. Yeah, I hope my screen is pretty much visible, right? So today's topic is Pandas group by. So that's what we are going to start. It's an interesting topic, guys. It's pretty much an interesting topic, and I would really want you to be up on your toes, and this is an important topic as well. So do not hesitate to ask your questions to me, okay? So we'll take up your questions. So what are group bys first of all, and then eventually how Pandas group by implementations are done, right? So group by performs following operations. So what it does, it splits the data into simpler subgroups, okay? So what is the data here? Data is your input data frame which you are giving to the your Pandas data, right? So that's going to be your initial data on which you'll be performing the group bys, right? So you're splitting the data into multiple subgroups here. That's going to be my first activity. Now, once you have divided the data into smaller subgroups, you will have to eventually perform some compute actions, right? So suppose I have say 30 rows and say 5 columns, for example, as a data. So I'm just giving you an example. So I have say data set, I have say 30 cross 5 data, so 30 rows and 5 columns. And in this 5 columns, suppose I have one column as say as category, okay, and then other are numerical columns, and then 4 numerical columns, right? For example, now what you have, so this category has say internally 5 unique values. So 5 cross, and every category has 6 such rows. So 5 cross 6, right? So 5 category, and for each category I have 6 rows each. So totally 30 rows I have. So that's what I have from the category column. And respectively I have 4 numerical columns, right? That is separate. Now here what I want is, now when I do a group by on say this category column, ultimately what it does, it's gonna create the number of rows for this group by. After the group by would be what? 5, right? So now because I have individually 5 such groups, right? So I'll be having 5 such groups of category. So now what happened after I applied group by, right? So the number of rows, so I'm just giving you a very detailing thing, right? It's important to understand this. So the number of rows, this got reduced, isn't it? This got reduced from 30 to 5. And the reason to that is, originally I had 30 rows, but after I applied group by, right? So the number of rows, I don't know what did I write here. Okay, got reduced to, anyway. Okay, so from 30 to 5, this is what I meant to say. So after when I applied the group by, the number of rows reduced, guys. This is something which is very important. The reason to that is because ultimately my group is what? Having the 5 individual such categories, right? So once I have those 5 categories with me, 5 rows with me, now what? This is for the category, right? What about the 4 numerical columns? So eventually the data would be having 5 rows, right? So now, but for this 4 numerical columns, I had 30 rows. So this has 30 rows, right? Now how to convert the other, which is non-category column, which is the on which I'm not performing the group by, how to use this 30 rows or 4 other numerical columns. So for this 4, I have to perform some aggregations, right? Some aggregation on top of this. So because I have to reduce this 30 rows to 5 rows to match this group by, right? So this is where I have to apply the aggregation. So what you can do is, maybe you can take a mean. So you can take a mean. So for numerical columns, what you can do is, for example, so aggregations may what you can perform, you can maybe do a mean of all the columns per group, or you can perform a median, you can take a sum, you can take a max. So whatever, some aggregation, you'll be performing some aggregation on top of this, because ultimately you have to reduce this 30 rows to 5 rows to match up the category column, match up the group, isn't it? This is the whole concept of group by, guys. I'm giving you a very detailing of things. This is the whole concept of group by. And now we'll be doing a lot of iterations on top of this, okay? So the very first thing which I've mentioned here is, it splits the data into groups. This is what I'm doing. So once I split the data into groups, And basically what I'm doing is I'm reducing my number of rows from 30 to 5, for example, in this case, depending on the number of category I have, number of subgroups I can make, right? How can I make such groups? Depending on the unique values I have of whatever columns I'm taking as a reference from my group by, right? This is fine, plain simple. Now, as I said, as a second step, for the other non-grouped columns, which is not getting used as a key for my group by, I have to do something on that column, right? So for that, I'll be applying the compute functions. I'll be applying some aggregations on top of this, right? So, I mean, anything on top of this. So either, there are three types of such functionalities which I can apply. So aggregations is first, where I'll be doing the summary stats, where I mentioned mean, median, sum and max. Okay, so this is coming under my first objective. I'm doing the performing some aggregations on top of that, right? The second compute functions which I can apply is transformations. So what are transformations? I'm actually transforming this one variable into something else, and I'll tell you the examples also. So another compute function here is I can do the transformations on top of this. I can just do some kind of changes, and I can convert the existing variable to something else. I can perform some transformation also. Simple bataun to maybe, you know, I'll give you the example, it'll be more clearer to you in that sense. And the third which I can do is filtrations or point of interest, right? So I can now on top of this, maybe for example, I can write out some logic to filter out the only needed columns, needed values from here. So that is again another compute functions which I can apply. So three things which I can do on the non-aggregated columns or which is not the key for my group bys, right? So I can perform three compute functions: aggregations, transformations, and filtrations. Any doubts here, guys? Any doubts? Yeah, I'll be anyway giving you the examples, but are you able to understand this logic? Quickly, just quick yes or no in the chat. Just quick yes or no in the chat, guys. Are you able to follow me? This is a very important topic, and I really want you to be active today in the chat. Right. So we have one yes from Mahesh. I hope others are also following up. Great. So let's proceed. Let's take one example and let's see how exactly. Okay, we have a question from Hellfire. Can you give quick brief, please? Yes, why not? I can do that. Okay. So as I said quickly, guys. So group bys, what it is doing, it is first splitting the data into groups. Okay. By group, I mean it is splitting the data into individual sub. Just give me a minute, guys. Okay, so apologies, guys. Okay, so great. So here, what I was saying is, so very first thing what I'm trying to do is I'm splitting the data into smaller groups. Okay, so that is my first objective. What I'm saying? So my smaller groups here. So smaller groups, for example, I was giving you this data frame, right? Suppose I have a data set which is having say 30 rows and 5 columns. So 30 rows and 5 columns. And in this, I have one column which is a category. Okay, and in this category, I have 5 subcategories. So for example, suppose I have a data of say cars. Okay, so it's a car data frame. Okay, it's a cars data frame. So I have model. So model, I mean maybe the manufacturer. Manufacturer. Then I have say, I don't know, mileage. Then I have price. I have, I don't know, length. I have weight. I have seating capacity. Okay, this is my data, right? And I have 30 rows in it. So imagine I have 30 such information. So manufacturer mein I can have say Toyota. So I have Toyota ka 6 rows. Arey yaar, what I'm typing, man. So Toyota ka 6, I have for Toyota I have 5 rows. 6 rows. Then I have Ford. I have Hyundai. I have Maruti. I have what else, man? Chevrolet. I think I'm spelling it out correctly. And then I have Honda. Okay, so I have these 5 cars. So six cars. Toyota, Ford, Hyundai, Maruti, Chevrolet. I have only 5 categories, for example. Just keep it like this. So I have 5 such categories, okay, and then I have for Toyota I have 6 rows, okay, and then I have respectively for each of them I have 6 rows each, and for all of these cars I have the respective mileage, price, length, weight, seating capacity, all just mentioned, right? So now what I'm trying to do is I'm creating a smaller group bys. I'm creating a smaller data frame. So where I have majorly talking about my individual such categories, which is Toyota and all that. So now when I'm doing a group by, so basically I'm reducing my number of data frame, number of rows from 30 on my original data to number of category I have, number of such individual categories I have, which is 5, right? So ultimately when I apply my group by, this data frame of 30 rows will be reduced to 5 rows because I only have 5 unique such categories, okay? Now on top of this, once I do it, definitely I have this other 4 columns left out, right? So this is my other columns left out. I have to do something to this, right? I cannot just leave it as it is because once I've reduced this number of rows from 30 to 5, what about the other 4 columns? I have to do something to that, right? That is where some compute functions come. So there are 3 different types of activities which you can perform on the other left out column, which is not the key for my group bys. So you can perform the aggregations, you can perform the transformations, and you can perform the filtrations. Okay. So aggregations, I have given you the example. So I can do a mean, median, sum, or max, or I can do the transformation. I can change the existing column into something else. I'll show you the example. And filtration also, I can filter out the needed point of interest for me. I'll show you how exactly we can do that. So now, for example, I'm creating this data frame, okay? So I'm creating this data frame. So I have a cricket data frame. So I have the team. So I have the columns like team, the rank, year, and points, okay? So just let me create this data frame and I'll show it to you. So just look at this data frame. This is quite interactive data frame, okay? So, okay. So now what we have here is, we have the list of teams, their respective ranks for the following years and the points. So we have these 4 informations, right? So for example, India's rank in the year 2014 was 2, right? And the points was 876. So for example, in 2014, I have some other teams also. 2014, I have Australia. So Australia was rank 1 on the year 2014. Likewise, you have South Africa in 2014, and then you have another column. So I have New Zealand also available as a rank 4. So in the year 2014, I have 4 different teams ranked from 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the respective points are also given to them, right? So this is and respectively, I have the information for 2014, 15, 16, and 17. So data is available for 4 different years. Okay, so 4 different years. The respective ranks, teams, and points are pretty much given here. Okay. Now what I can do here is simply, so now oh my god, so I think I have deleted the, okay, so now simply, I mean, just look at the few of the examples here, right? So what I'm trying to do is I just did a very basic analysis. So I can use the value sort values, the function sort values to figure out the data. I'm going to look at how exactly my data looks like if I sort it in terms of team and year. So respectively, I've just sorted the data in terms of team and year. So for Australia, rank 1. So for Australia, rank 2014 is rank 1, 15 is 2. Then India I have 3 rows. India 2014, 15, and 17. So I don't have any information for India in the year 2016. So likewise, Australia don't have any information in 2016 and 17. So New Zealand, I have 14, 15, and 16. South Africa, I have 14, 15, 16, and 17. All 4 years of data information available, right? So respectively, I have just sorted the data in terms of team and year. So we've already seen that, how to sort the values, right? So I mean, sort values, I'm passing my key on which I'm trying to sort the data, okay? Now, how to split the data? So we can create this into multiple subgroups. So for example, we can create a group of Australia, a team, or maybe we can create the group in terms of year, or maybe we can create a group in terms of rank. So all the rank ones are given a different group. So ultimately, I can give any key I want, right? Based on any logic, then eventually I can create the keys for me, right? Yes, Mahesh. So here I'm sorting first based on team and then on year. So here the priority is also given. So first is my team. So first the sorting will be done on team and then year. So you can see this, right? So alphabetical sorting is done based on Australia. So Australia comes first because A is first, then I, then N, then S, right? So likewise team is getting sorted, and within this team the sorting is done based on years. So 2014, then 15. Then for India again 14, 15, 17. Then for New Zealand 14, 15, 16, and so likewise. So henceforth. So this is how the sortings are done, right? So now talking about the group bys, how we can split up the data. Okay, so three ways. Okay, so there are different three ways to split up the data. So we can call the function group by. So df dot group by, and it's an object, so it accepts parenthesis. In this we can pass the key. Okay, so we can either pass a single key. So for example, and this key would be the column name for me, right? So I have here the column name, for example, team. I can create the data in terms of team. I can also give rank, and I can also give year, and I can also give points. If there are if there are points of similar points, we will create the groups. Otherwise, we'll keep individual groups as it is, right? So it's still okay. So this key is nothing but the column name which I'll be passing, on which I want to create the group bys. Okay. Now I can like the way I have created the sort values here, right? Sort values in terms of multiple such columns. I can also pass multiple such keys on top of my group bys. Pretty much possible. I'll show you the example also. And the third way is I can simply pass the key name, which is not actually in the terms of quotes. I can specify the axis as axis as 1. So specify axis as 1. So it's gonna make sure that this is treated as my column header for me. Okay. So now look at how exactly we can create the groups. Okay, so the first way, which is nothing but I'm using the first key, only a single key for me. Okay, so what I'm passing is df.groupby, and I'm passing team here. Okay, so now what it does, let me just show it to you. Okay, so now if we only run df.groupby.team, right, it has created a group by object. Can you see this? It has created a group by object, and it has given the location where exactly this group by is located. So it has only created a group by object, right? But you're not able to see the data. You're not able to see the data. It has just created a group by object. Now there's a task. So in this group by object, we have the respective groups available. So we have to actually figure out what are those groups, and in each of these individual groups, what are the elements I have in the group. So this is something which is very important. Okay, so we'll look at that. How exactly we can pass up those information and find out the details one by one. Okay, so for example, to view the different groups which is getting created here, we have an argument function called as groups. So we can call the object groups on top of the group by element, and it'll show me the groups which I have here. Okay, so for example, if I run it like this, so can you see this? It has returned a dictionary of different such groups. So what it is returning me, look at the output very clearly, guys. It is returning, so output of this is a dictionary, right? And in dictionary, the key is the group name. Group name, and the value is, can somebody tell me what is this value? Look at the data now, and can somebody tell me what is this value quickly? I'll just print this here so that you can able to understand this. Can somebody tell me what is this value? Quickly, guys, can you relate what is this value? No, Mahesh, it is not the rank. No, why it should be the rank? Yes, it is the index. There's no logic of rank here, right? I have not specified rank. It is giving me the indexes. Look at it very carefully. 2 and 3 are available here, isn't it? India at 0, 1 and 11. So 0, 1 and 11. Can you see this? It is giving me the indexes where my respective groups are present. It is a very important information. Look at this. So this groups is giving me a dictionary element where the key is the group name and value is nothing but the index location where these group elements are present. Got it? Can you see this? So for example, New Zealand 8, 9 and 10. So I have 8, 9 and I can just blindly say that the New Zealand information is available in the indexes 8, 9 and 10 in my data frame. So this is what it gives. Okay? It gives the indexes of your information. Cool? So that's your first important function available under group by, which is groups. So it gives me the information of groups. Okay? Now look at the other parts. So I just have the groups now. I still don't have the data, isn't it? So another function which I have is, so what I've learned is a first function called is groups. In this groups, I'm getting the name of the group, right? And then the respective indexes. So now I have another very interesting function called as get group. Okay, so I have a very interesting function called as get group. And in this get group, we actually passes the indexes of my groups. So so in this key, right? So I'm sorry, the keys of my group. So this group element is returning a dictionary, right? So key is the name of the group, right? So we can pass the key element from the group directly under a function called as get group. So suppose Australia is my first group, right? My first key. If I do it like this, I'll get the smaller data frame. So what it does, it simply filter out the data based on this indexes. So I have 2 and 3 here. It'll simply filter out the data based on the value of this group, which is 2 and 3, and then give me that data. So get group based on the key values Australia, I'm getting that only the smaller data frame. You got it? So this is another very important function available under my group by. So the first function which I've told you is groups, and the second function which I've told you is get group. Okay, so get group is giving me the information of my individual groups. Guys, clear? Cool guys, understanding? Any doubts here? Great. So this is my two functions, groups and get group. Moving ahead, right? So now we have seen this. Just making it more interesting here. So now what I'm trying to do is, I'm using the second way where, what is the second way? I'm passing two keys now. Okay, I'm passing two keys. In this case, I'm passing two different such elements. So for example, here what I'm passing is team and year. Okay, so now I am again simply printing the df here. So I have team and year. Okay, so I'm creating a data frame with team and year. Now look at this. So if I call the groups here, can you see this? Now look at this output very carefully again. Okay, and look at this output very carefully. So whatever such smaller groups is gets created, is gonna give you the such key and the value pair. Okay, so the first group is in the combination of team and year is Australia and 2014, and also if you can see this, it is available under a tuple element. So what is a tuple? You know that, right? Tuple is an immutable form of list, right? So this is in this, so you have decided the group already. You cannot change this group anymore. So once you have done a group by on this, you cannot change this grouping. So if you get the key here, this is what the key you will get. And so every team and every year combined, whatever possible combinations you can have, you'll be getting those as a keys, right? And respectively all the indexes values. So Australia 2014, so Australia and 2014, only one row is available, which is at 2 location, right? I'm getting 2, right? So likewise for all such combinations, I'll be getting the row indexes, right? This is what my groups give me. Now to get this data, so the get group function, right? So to get group function, I have to pass both of them as a key. I cannot simply pass Australia or 2014 as a key. So for example, here you can see this in this get group function, right? I have to pass this as form of my tuple element itself. I have to pass it like this, Australia and 2014. It is a tuple element. It's both of them combined is my key now. Once I do it, now I'll get the same data. So here the value is 2, right? So it will simply filter out the data on the second index the data can. So now the output would be only the smaller data frame where the index is 2. Okay, so this is how the group by works. So second way, we've already seen that. Now again, very interesting thing is now iteration, right? So now we have the groups, so we can also do the iteration on top of the groups. So for example, can you see this, right? So it creates the group by element, and you know what are the group by elements. So we have the key and the data. So for example, if we can iterate it over key and the data. So key is nothing but my individual group name, and data is nothing but my the individual data points of my such keys, right? So for example, if I run it over this, now can you see this? For the first key, which is Australia, I'm getting Australia 2 rows, so 2 and the 3 index. Now for the keys 1, which is in India, so for India I'm getting the rows respectively for India, and then the next key is New Zealand, then I'll have the respective rows for New Zealand, then for South Africa, right? So I'm just getting all of the informations available for my individual such key and the data for me. Cool? Clear? I can definitely do the fine tuning on top of this. Great. Clear, guys? Any questions? Guys, any questions? Anything which you want to talk about? Okay. I hope, thank you Hellfire for confirming. So I'll just quickly explain to Mahesh once again. So this group, okay, so I can iterate over the group by elements also. So for example, as I'm showing you the key and the data, right? I can simply do, it has to, every group by elements, every group by object has two information in it. It has a key and the data for that key, right? And what is that key? Key is the unique name, unique value of such column name. So for example here team, right? So I'm grouping by over team. So what are my individual teams available here? Australia, India, New Zealand, South Africa. These are my different group keys. So keys become the name of my teams, right? So those become my keys. So Australia and all that. And the data is nothing but for that key, what all different values, different rows are present. That will become the data point of that key. Okay. So that's what I have for key in the data. Okay, moving ahead. So I think as I've already shown you, so same example is pretty much here. So you know this. So I can do pretty much on group by. So we have done that. Okay. So now moving ahead. Now what about the I would say aggregations on the things, right? So now we have performed the group bys, right? Now what about others? So nobody has noticed this. So we have again the group bys. So group by is again giving me the smaller chunk of my data, right? So eventually what I'm doing is, so if I just simply doing a group by for team, it is giving me this smaller information, right? But still the number of rows are not getting reduced. I am just getting the smaller data frame, right? But eventually I'm not reducing one category to one row. Am I doing that? I'm not doing that right now, right? So it is more of a filtration right now which I'm doing. I'm just filtering out my data. So now what I can do is I can run some things on top of this. So now I can create some more information. So for example, the very first thing which I'm trying to do is aggregations, the compute function which I was talking about, right? So for example, here I'm trying to perform some aggregation. And what is those aggregations? I'm trying to calculate the size of my individual subgroups, or I'm trying to count the number of rows which is available under such groups. For example, I'm creating a group element, so which is a group by of team. And on this, I'm performing this action on this group element. I'm performing this action of aggregate, because aggregate is done only on top of this group, not on this df, right? It is done on top of the group by element. It is an object of a group by element, right? So now I'm talking. So I could also have done .agg here. It's still fine, but I'm just doing a second line sentence. So now if you see this, now I have reduced this into 4 different rows because I have 4 different keys available for me, right? So 4 keys: Australia, New Zealand, India, New Zealand, South Africa. So 4 rows. So 4 rows for 4 different teams. And for the other column, which is rank, year and points, I have done the aggregation where I've calculated the number of rows. What is the size of what is the number of rows for each of these columns? I mean, obviously it will remain the same, but this is what I have done here right now. Make sense? I could have also done, I can do anything here in this case. I can simply do np.max, for example. So I'll get the maximum of all of these for respective rows, right? So for example, Australia maximum is 2. I mean, obviously, so rank minimum is the maximum, it's not maximum is the minimum, right? So this is what I have to understand. So I mean, logically we have to do that. So, but again, I can perform any aggregation on top of this, okay? So this is what my statistical aggregations mean, right? Now also I can do a multiple statistics also, some particular column wise. So for example, I don't want to calculate the size or do anything for all of these columns. I just want to use, after the aggregation, I want to calculate the minimum, maximum, for example here in this case, sum, mean and the standard deviation of my points per team. I want to see that, okay? I can do that as well. So I have created this group by element, df.group by team. Now on top of this group, I'm only indexing, I'm only filtering out a single column, which is points. So I'm making sure that I'm not doing it for the entire data, I'm just doing it for points. On points, I'm applying dot aggregate, and on this aggregate, I'm doing what? I'm passing it again the list of functions which I want to perform, which is np.sum, np.mean and np.standard deviation. I can pretty much do that. So now can you see this? I have the team here, which is Australia, India and New Zealand and South Africa. And then I have sum, mean and the standard deviation columns created for points on respective teams. So all of these teams, respective sum, mean and standard deviation is getting calculated. Make sense? We can do the multiple statistics also, particular column wise. Or we can do a pinpointed also. So for example, we can have something like this. So we can also do a group by of team, and then on top of this we can just simply filter out the column and we can check the mean also pretty much fine. So I have Australia ka mean, then I have India ka mean, then I have New Zealand mean and South Africa mean points. So and these mean are nothing but points mean, okay? So column points mean for respective teams, okay? This is what I'm trying to do. Clear? Now I'm giving you one interesting example here. So now look at this information. So I'm creating another data frame. So here I have 4 different columns A, B, C and D. I'm creating some random values here. And I've created a group column. So I have 2 different groups. You can see this. I have 0, 0 and 1, 1. Okay. So I have 0, 0 and 1, 1. Okay. So this is what I've done. So now here in this example, what you have seen is I'm writing for the column points, I'm doing it sum, mean and standard deviation. What if now you want to perform multiple things in multiple columns? For points you want to perform sum, mean and standard deviation. But what if for say other column, which is say what all we have? So we have something called as rank, right? So for rank I want to call the minimum. For year I want to call the maximum, right? So different set of operations for different columns. I can pretty much do that very easily, okay? And how to do that? Just look at this syntax, okay? Look at this syntax. So for example, now what I'm trying to do is, for the same data frame which I've created here, I'm doing a group by on group, okay? I'm doing a group by on this group. Now I'm writing the aggregate functions, okay? Now in this aggregate function, instead of passing this as a list of elements, list of functions on a single column, I can pass a dictionary. I can pass a dictionary of such functions where the key would be the column name and the value would be the function which I want to pass on. So on that column, what function I want to pass. For example, for the column A, I want sum and max to be done, okay? For column B, I want the mean to be done. For C, I want the sum to be done. And for D, I've created a user defined function lambda. I want the difference between the maximum and the minimum. Still fine. I can do that. So I've created a new user-defined function here, the range of the values between the maximum and the min. I can pretty much do that, isn't it? So now if I do it like this, can you see it? I have the groups. I have A ka sum and max, and I have B ka mean and C ka sum, and then I have D. For D I have a lambda function definitely. Pretty much I have created it, right? Simple. Yes, now you can see this pretty much the column headers are not oriented. This can be pretty much sorted. There's no problem in that. You can obviously rename the entire column, and then you can obviously rename whatever you want. But again, I mean the kind of compute function you wanted to perform on top of this data, it is pretty much possible with this, isn't it? Right? So now, just a simple way, you can see this. I can also directly rename the column. So instead of doing like this, I can have just renamed it. You can see this. Now I've in this aggregated function, there's another way. Instead of passing a dictionary, I can pass it in terms of the different values also. So I've created a new variable inside this a underscore sum, and this I'm passing the list of arguments, which is the column name and the function I wanted to create. So I can do this a ka sum. I'm creating a new column called as a means, and for the column A I want to call the mean. So another way, so I can rename it directly by using this method also. But it is only valid for Pandas version greater than 0.25. Okay, so there is certain limitations in certain versions. So for the Pandas version 0.25, you can pretty much do that. Okay. Great. Any concerns, guys? Any questions in this? Okay. So let's have a last topic for the day, and then we'll close up. So we have something called as transform and the filter also, right? So we till now we have only seen what we have only seen still only the aggregations, right? But we have two more compute functions. Like we have transformation and we have filter also, right? So what about transformation? So for example, here transformation, I mean I'm trying to change the data into something else, right? So for example, what I'm trying to do is now I'm creating the group by as team, okay? But now what I want is I'm creating a transform function. What does it mean? The value should be not x anymore. It should be x minus x of mean. So I'm reducing the value from x to x of mean, okay? So now in this case, I don't know what is the problem. Team. Okay, so I think I have to run this again. My bad, guys. Just a minute. Okay, I'll just quickly come back to this step. Okay, so now can you see this? Now for respective individual elements, what I'm trying to do is I'm just printing the group of points, which is reducing the number of elements. I mean, I'm passing a transform function here, and for transform, what I mean, I'm removing the for each of those groups, I'm transforming the element, the value, changing the value from x minus x of mean, and this is valid for each of my groups. So for respective groups, respective means would be different, and from that mean is getting subtracted from my individual such groups. Okay, so this is what, again, another way of doing things on transform. Lambda function is simple, hai? Lambda, you know it already. So it's an inline function, so we can create a user defined. We have already discussed this, Hellfire. So lambda is a user defined function, inline function, so in which you can pretty much define your own logic. So instead of writing in form of a definition or something like that, so if it's a smaller function, you can still write this form for lambda. So it's a user defined inline function. Okay, so that's about transform. So transform you are not changing the number of rows. If you have seen, the number of rows will remain the same as 11, because you're not changing the number of rows, you're not reducing it, you're just transforming the existing value into something else based on some other logic, which is a transform logic, which is like a x minus x of mean respective to each of the groups. This is what I'm trying to do. Okay, so this is what transform does. The last function which I have in compute is filter. Okay, so now for example, same thing here. So I'm creating a group by on team. Okay, now what I want is I only want the such groups where the length of, so the number of rows for each of these teams is more than equal to 3. So now can you see this? if you see this briefly, Australia is gone from here, right? Because Australia, if you would have seen earlier, it had only 2 rows, right? So you can see this, Australia only had 2 rows, right? This is not passing the criteria here. This is not passing the criteria, and that is the reason why, because the logic is greater than or equal to 3. So India is having 3, South Africa is having 3, New Zealand is having 3, South Africa is having 4, but Australia was having number of rows as 2, right? So length of X in this case for Australia is not passing. So I'm filtering out the data, right? So on top of group, I'm performing a filter operation. Still pretty much possible. So these are the 3 things which you can do, right? Column name here would be again points only. So I've just printed it. So I've just transformed for now. So it's giving me a series element, but again it's going to be points only. It's a points data only. So points table I'm just transforming into something else. Points data. Cool, great guys. So I think with this we are pretty much done with the discussion on group buys. Now is the time when we should move and do some problem statements. Okay, we will do that, and pretty much we'll start it from we'll do some good questions tomorrow. So tomorrow will be our last session on this playlist. Okay, so we'll be wrapping up our question session on transformation. So anyone group buys, transform, filter, aggregation. So we'll do some good questions and we'll close it up tomorrow. Okay. Great guys, so with this, thank you so much for being patient and listening to me, and I hope you enjoyed the session. Let me know if there is any question, or if there's nothing, then we can wrap up. We can meet up tomorrow, and then we'll be doing some questions, and then we'll close up. So we are pretty much done with the theory part. There's nothing left in to teach in Pandas. Yeah, I mean, it's not like nothing left, but again, majority of the things are covered. So, but most probably, I think now it's your time to do R&D on top of this. Right? Eventually, we can always come back with a set of questions. So tomorrow we'll be doing a few questions, and then we'll wrap up the playlists. Okay. Great guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being patient, and see you tomorrow same time 10